Lyndon Forbes Sampson Bonham, well known as the master politician and was an outstanding statesman. He was a great leader and our hero, you understand. That's why we remember Lyndon Bonham.
Yeah, very good morning to you viewers. You're on the air once again. The State of the Nation is in your living room, your bedroom, and your kitchen. And I want to thank you for tuning in once again to the State of the Nation. Local government elections are in the air right now. The bills have been passed in Parliament, yet to be signed by the President. But by popular demand, there has been a team going around talking and discussing local government in Guyana. By popular demand, a number of people and communities around Guyana have requested that the information that was presented at these seminars and workshops be made available to members of the public. So today's program, we'll be doing a special feature on local government, information that is required for local government. You will recall that Lyndon Forbes Sampson Bonham has been associated with local government reform for decades. He was associated with the Marshall Report, and then you had elections in 1969. For the record, the 1980 Constitution, the constitution that governs Guyana up until now, is the only constitution in the Caribbean where local government is enshrined, in which local government is enshrined. That being so, information on local government is extremely important. So for today, I have with me in the studio none other than Mr. Vincent Alexander, chairman of the foundation, that is the Forbes Bonham Foundation, who I consider one of the authorities on local government in Guyana. For today's program, those of you who are looking at this program, I would ask that you take out your notepads, your pencils, because the information that will be coming to you today will be very important. Those of you who miss it and you don't think that you should write down today, we will be making the CD available to you. It will be for sale for $1,000 in support of the foundation. And you can get it on request at Channel 9, or you can call 223-5475 to get copies of today's program. So I don't want to stand between you and what information will be given today. But we will be leaving a 15 minutes coming on to the end of the program for viewers to call in and maybe to have some clarification on the information that has been given. So I would like to start right off the bat by asking Mr. Alexander, who is with me in the studio today, to tell me, what is local government?
Thank you very much, Clayton. As you correctly said, local government elections are in the air. And we have last had elections in 1994. And so there are many young people out there who will be eligible to vote in these elections who have never experienced one. And so it's important that we share information with them, not only about the elections, but what is local government itself? What is local government? To say what is local government, I'd like to point to 4 factors. In any country, you have a national government that's responsible for the affairs of the country throughout the land. But at the same time, you have something called local government that exists not for the entire country as a whole, but for individual parts of the country, individual segments of the country. So whenever one talks about local government, one should immediately start to think of individual geographical segments of the country. In the case of Guyana presently, when we talk about local government, our reference has to be to 6 municipalities: the town of Riverton, the town of Rose Hall, the the tongue of New Amsterdam, the tongue of Linden, the tongue of Anne Regina, and the Georgetown city, the city of Georgetown. Those are the 6 municipalities, and those are local government bodies for those 6 geographic parts, those 6 segments of Guyana. In addition to those 6 municipalities, we have 65 neighborhood democratic councils across the coast, from Cariveton way down to Charity, as well as we have a few in Region 10. We have the Kakwani area. In Region 9, we have the Lethem area. In Region 1, we have the Mabroom area, and we have the Matarakai area. So those are the areas covered by local authorities. So they are distinct geographic segments of the country. Now, obviously, those segments, as physical segments, are not themselves, by themselves, a local government. Local government has to do with the population who reside in those various segments. So we have geographic areas, we have their population. In addition to the population, we then have an authority, a local authority. It's called, in some instances, the municipality, as I mentioned earlier, and there are 6. And in the other instances, they're called neighborhood democratic councils. So these are the authorities that are responsible in those areas for regulating those areas and for the provision of services in those areas. So all told, local government is about a local area, its population, the local government, the local authority, and the way in which that local authority regulates certain activities in the area and delivers certain services. Now, a local authority doesn't do everything in its area, its space. There are things that central government does for the entire country in a local area or wherever. But there are some specific things which are done by local authorities in the local area. For example, they may be looking after streets, they may look after drainage, they may look after sanitation, they may look after markets, they may look after abattoirs, they may even look after things like the creche, a health facility. So there are a range of things that are done in the local area, specific to the local area, by the local authority. And so that, in a sense, is how one sees and speaks about local authorities.
Let me ask you, Vincent, right away. I want to go to my other question. Will be, what is a constituency?
That's a very important question, Clayton, because in the upcoming elections, unlike previous elections, the question of the constituency will loom large. In previous elections, the elections in 1970 and the elections in 1994 in particular, we did not use constituencies. What we did, the entire local authority area was presented with a list of candidates by the respective parties. So each party put up a list, or if not a party, a community group, a civic group put up a list, and the voters were able to go and to cast their vote for the list. And so after they would have casted the vote for the list, then the parties would have extracted people from those lists in keeping with the number of seats that they were allocated. And so it was the entire local authority which was treated with in the election as a one-off arrangement. Constituencies, on the other hand, are smaller segments of the local authority. Smaller segments. So a local authority may be divided into sub-segments because, as I said, the local authority is itself a segment of the country. So that local authority can be further divided into sub-segments, which may be referred to as constituencies for the purpose of election. And so when one talks about constituency, one is talking about elections that are focused not on the entire area
of the local authority.
of the local authority for the purpose of electing the candidates, but is focused on segments of that local authority for the identification of candidates in relation to those segments. You see, in the old system, the councillors were identified in relation to the entire local authority. When you talk about constituencies, you're now finding a way in which you're dividing the local authority up into parts and you're identifying candidates with the specific parts. Their election is related to a specific part and is for a specific part. So constituencies simply means that in an election, rather than all of the votes being in one basket for the purpose of pulling people from a list, the votes are related to small segments, and in those small segments, the votes are related to the election of a person or persons to represent the particular segment. And this is very important because these elections, unlike previous elections, particularly 1994, will be associated with constituencies in which the voters will have the opportunity to elect a candidate, a councillor.
Wonderful. I think I want to remind our viewers that part of our mandate on the foundation is to make sure that we provide for you information that can help you to live comfortably and effectively in this country. Forbes Burnham has been associated with the local government system in my earlier remarks since in 1969, and especially in relation to the implementation of the Marshall Plan. Now, I want to go to the electoral system, Vincent, which, in my view, for some people, it's a little complicated. But with your kind of knowledge on this system, I trust that our viewers will understand very clearly how the new electoral system will work.
Thank you very much, Clayton. What I will do for the purposes of explaining the electoral system, I will use Georgetown as a municipality as one example, and I'll probably use Grove Haslington as a neighborhood democratic council as another example, so we can easily explain the electoral system. Now, as I said previously, in Georgetown, for municipal elections, a voter went to his place of poll and voted for a party or a group which would have put up a list of persons to contest in those elections. After the voting would have been completed, the votes would have been counted, and the parties would have been allocated seats in proportion to the number of votes that they acquired. So let's assume Georgetown had 1,000 voters. And let's also assume that Georgetown had 10 councillors in the council, or 10 seats to be contested at the elections. They would then count the votes, and let's assume a party got 500 votes out of the 1,000. Then that party will get half the number of seats in proportion, proportionality. The value of a seat in that circumstance would be 100 votes. And so you take the 100 votes, divide the number of votes the party actually got, and determine the value of a seat. And so a party in a situation where there are 1,000 votes, 10 seats, 100 votes per seat, getting 500 votes would be able to get 5 seats. And in that way, one would be able to allocate seats to various parties based on the number of votes they acquire, and then these parties will go to the list that they put up. They would pull the number of candidates who they have been allocated, 5 or 3 or 2, and those persons would then become the councillors. It's interesting to note that these elections are not about a mayor or not about a chairman of a neighborhood democratic council. They're about the councillors. It's only after the councillors are elected, then they among themselves, at the level of the council, will on an annual basis elect a mayor and a deputy mayor, or a chairperson or a vice chairperson, whether it's a municipality or neighborhood
neighborhood.
democratic council. These elections are initially not about the mayors. I mean, parties may strategically mention who they would like to be the mayor, but you're not going to the poll to elect the mayor. You're going to the poll to elect the councillors. So that's the old system where all of the people are pulled from lists, and the election is general to the local area. The new system is different. The new system provides for half of the councillors to be elected in the manner that I just explained. In other words, when you go to vote, half of the councillors will be elected by voting for a list or voting for a group that has put up a list. Half of the councillors.